Yep.
Well, again, welcome to everyone who's dialing in here for our annual meeting. And we'll wait just probably another 30 seconds or so to jump start it with our chair, Mr. Pat Sang. So thank you for your interest in this. We'll have a very succinct program today, cover a few items that we accomplished over the last year. And of course, we'll have the Mayor of the City of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry, joining us a bit later. Pat, I think since it is exactly 9:02, you want to start us off?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Kevin. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 annual meeting. I am Pat Sang from Cushman & Wakefield, and I am the chair of the board of directors. That is until I am unceremoniously dethroned in a few short minutes by Ms. Kohler. So I'm going to hang on to this as long as I can. Since this is our annual meeting, it includes elections as well as recognition for those of you who have helped make it all happen. Later today, you will receive a copy of our annual review with information about what we've achieved over this past year. I encourage you to take some time to review it, as it is indeed fascinating. This is in addition to the infographic that was distributed towards the end of last year, which offered additional details. For today, let's start by reviewing the accomplishments of this past year, which have been many. And for that, I asked Kevin Lewis, President and CEO of BOMA Greater Minneapolis, to give us his very brief summary report. Kevin?
Great, thanks, Pat. And I won't dwell on it. I think all of you have lived and breathed the last 13 months or so in what was a really unique period of time in all of our careers. As Pat mentioned, our annual review will be sent out. That's a nice synopsis of some of the things we became involved with to react to what transpired again over the last 13 months or so. Also, I would say that the infographic that we sent out several months ago also charts kind of a timeline where we instituted some of the initiatives to help really respond to what's taking place. So I encourage you to look at the review that you're going to get and also the infographic that we sent out. But in a nutshell, we always wanted to look to the future, and over the last 13 months, we became somewhat of a reactionary association. In other words, whatever information we could provide to all of you today, tomorrow, the very next day, those are the things that were important as things change so quickly. And I can compliment certainly my staff, Christine, Riley, and McKenzie, for what they did to help put this information, to collect this information, and to distribute it to all of you. So normally we like to sit back and say we held so many meetings here and this and that. All I'm going to say is that we pivoted in terms of virtual events so that we could still engage with all of you from afar, but also to get the information to you. That was important as to what was taking place. So with that, I'll just let that go and again read those documents if you could. But first, I'd like to take a moment to thank our 2021 Board of Directors for their effective leadership for the last 12 months. And I can almost assure you, particularly our chair, Pat Sang, that if any chair over the last 40 years was asked the question, gee, do you wish you could have been the chair during March of 20 through March of 21? I think universally the answer would be, oh my God, no. So Pat, thank you for your leadership, and we talked almost daily on this and what we could do to provide. So thanks very much, Pat. It was, and to the entire board and executive committee who really stuck together on this. But let's go ahead and identify the board. Pat Sang, of course, was a chair. Vice Chair, Deb Kohler, Assessor Services. Secretary Treasurer, Terry Steinkraus with Duke Realty. Todd Balsiger from JLL. Lee Davis, Target. Brenda Grams, CBRE. Jeff Krieger, Zeller. Kristen Long Henry, Wildermer Capital Management. Cindy McDonald, Kraus Anderson, Liz Morrissey, CBRE, Caitlin Schuweiler, Heinz, Alex Smith, Newmark, Christy Speck, ABM, and Kurt Wilczek, Piedmont Office Realty. These are the folks that help guide our association over the last year, and one of the most challenging years I think any of us will have experienced. So please, in all of those that have participated in the call, in your own way, I wish you'd take the opportunity to extend your sincere thanks, as we, the staff, have an appreciation to our officers and directors for their substantial contributions to our association over the last year or so. With that, I turn it back to you, Pat.
Thanks, Kevin. It goes without saying that there are many people whose contributions make this organization successful. I think at last count, we've got 180 some people on, so it's a big group. Everybody plays their part. Thank you so much. Thanks to all committee chairs and members for their tremendous dedication of time, talent, and expertise. Now, we'd like to recognize the board members whose current terms are ending. While we aren't able to invite them to the stage this year, we would like to recognize each of them for their dedication and diligence on behalf of our membership. Ms. Liz Morrissey, CBRE, and I don't know if Liz is with us today, but if she is, she was the board champion for the events committee and also serves on awards and recognition committee. Ms. Brenda Graham, CBRE, has been a longtime member of and recently board champion for awards and recognition committee. She has also served on the education committee. Ms. Christy Speck, ABM, our Queen of Clean, has served as our service provider on the board this past year. She has been active in our organization as a member and past chair of the events committee. She currently serves as the membership and on the membership and Best of BOMA committee. Ms. Cindy McDonald, Kraus Anderson, is a past president of this board, as well as a longtime member of both the membership committee and mentorship program. She has contributed greatly to our organization since she has joined in 1993. And our staff states that she still is on speed dial for the office. It shall be of no surprise to those of us who know Cindy that she arrived promptly at 10 p.m. last night for this morning's meeting. She tends to get a bit early, for those of you who don't know. I want to personally thank all of you for your significant contributions to BOMA. Now I will ask the current Secretary Treasurer, Ms. Tara Stein-Kraus, to provide us a report on the finances for the last year. Tara?
Thanks, Pat. The association continues to be in very stable financial condition, even with the challenges of the past year. Our annual financial audit review was just completed by the outside firm of Olson Thielen, and it provided a favorable report on our 2020 operations, of which an overview is provided in the annual review electronic publication that will be sent to you later today. Anyone wishing more information or to view a copy of the full financial report may contact the BOMA office directly.
Thank you, Tara. Next is Cindy McDonald, chair of our nominating committee this year, to provide the nominating committee report, which makes perfect sense, I guess. Cindy?
Thank you, Mr. Sang. Good morning, everyone. The nominating committee met on March 19th to consider candidates for the 4 open positions on the board of directors. As with last year, since we are unable to meet in person, the ballot containing the slate of officers and director nominees was sent electronically to our membership on April 8th. Voting was concluded at 4 p.m. yesterday. Per our bylaws, we are required to have at least 1/5 of our 283 voting members participate for a quorum. And I am pleased to say that we were able to complete our vote. And the results of the election are approved for a 1-year term on the executive committee. Deb Kohler, Assessor Services. Tara Stein-Kraus, Duke Realty. Lee Davis, Target. Elected for a 3-year term on the board of directors, Steve Peckman, Shorenstein Realty. Monique Slaughter, Cushman and Wakefield. Raymond Vaughn, Ryan Companies. Elected for a 2-year term on the board of directors, Christine Hansen, Recycle Technologies. Thank you to all my colleagues on the nominating committee for their participation. Please join me in congratulating our new officers and directors. I will clap for everyone. I have the honor to now turn over the meeting to our new chair, Deb Kohler.
Well, thank you, Cindy. I appreciate it. Although earlier today, Pat Sang indicated he was wanting to stay in this position, so maybe we should turn it back to Pat. Pat?
I'm not going anywhere, Deb.
All righty. All right, on with the show then. But seriously, before I kick off the next year as your BOMA chair, I want to say a few words for Pat. Heitman and pink jumpsuit. I'll let you explain those to everyone else later. But seriously, Pat, you and I have known each other for more years than I care to mention. We've shared best practices, best employees, and lots of laughs over the years. I want to begin by saying thank you for your dedicated leadership over the past year. Your easy manner of hitting all of our challenges head on, both with the pandemic and the civil unrest, have been much appreciated. Our organization has not only survived, but thrived under your leadership. And for that, we should all be truly grateful. I hope I can continue this great strides you've made, and I'm sure with the board elected today, we'll continue to move this organization forward. So thank you, Pat. We appreciate your service, and we look forward to one more year as past president. You're still with us.
Thank you, Deb.
On to some business. We have some good news to share today. The Midwest Northern Regional TOBIs have been completed, and we have the following moving on to the International Summer Annual Meeting for BOMA on July 20th. The recipients or the award winners going on to international are Crescent Ridge in the 250 to 499 999 category, U.S. Bancorp Center in the 500 to 1 million square foot category. The historical category is Tractor Works, and Norman Point 1 in the 100 to 244 999. So we wish them all luck as they head to Boston on July 20th. Kevin, would you like to introduce today's speaker? Kevin, you are muted.
That was my one time this year that I'm allowed to do that, apparently. So yeah, our speaker will be joining us just in a little bit. Obviously, his schedule is very busy. We're hoping that he'll be joining us in about 10 minutes or so. But while we wait for him, first of all, I'd like to add my, again, congratulations to Monique and Christine and Steve and Ray. Obviously, they've served on many committees and have been engaged with our association for many years. So we look forward to their contributions, and to those that rolled off the board, Cindy in particular. Gosh, Cindy, they're going back to your engagement from into the 90s, and you're still chairing the nominating committee and everything else. So we really appreciate your long-term investment in BOMA. Brenda and Liz certainly providing expertise too over the last year, and also Christy representing our associate members. So thank you to those that are for rolling off, and thank you to the new ones coming on for their commitment to our association. A couple other things too, as Deb pointed out, the TOBIs, we have 6 buildings that'll be advancing to the internationals, as she mentioned, in Boston. I'd like to personally thank the Awards and Recognition Committee too for their hard work. There's some BOMAs across the country that said, gee, we can't get it together this year to have our own local competition, let alone trying to go on to, regionals and so on and so forth. So that committee put together a strong program to encourage participation in our local TOBIs, and we were very successful. So to have 6 advance to Boston, that's wonderful. That's terrific, and hopefully all 6 of them will win. That would be terrific. And while I'm mentioning the Awards and Recognition Committee, we typically have time to acknowledge all the committees and the committee chairs and co-chairs. We didn't have the time today. We have a little moment now, so I just would like to thank those that have committed time and resources again to be a chair co-chair or a member of the various committees that we have. And I think we have 14 committees, which of course is a wonderful attribute to have. So you won't be able to see their faces on the screen, but again, to many of you out there, thank you for that commitment. A couple, we always talk about in person. When can we get back together in person? And I think with the vaccinations taking place and so on, we're looking hard at it. It won't be in May. Our golf tournament will be in September. Again, the decision was made a couple months ago, but we felt we had such a great turnout last year and the weather was marvelous, and we absolutely guarantee, so to speak, that the weather will be tremendous in September as well. So we felt, let's just do it in September and do it right, and that's what we're going to do. As far as future meetings go, and committee meetings for that matter, we're looking towards the end of summer before anything that would be in person. The executive committee discussed this, our board of directors, we discussed it at length, staff did, the education committee, and we all pretty much felt, let's get through May virtually and then set our sights for later in the early fall when we might be able to have in person, or maybe we have a combo platter of sorts, something where people can participate virtually, but more importantly in person, and the social events too. As you know, that's one of our priorities at BOMA is education, advocacy, and then also certainly the opportunity for all of you to network with one another. Also hard at work, we typically have our resource fair. Now our expo take place in March, where we're able to have it last March in 20. This year, it just didn't make sense to have it in March. So we're still considering things. The committee's working hard on it. It'd be later this summer, maybe later summer in that regard, but I feel confident that we're going to come up with a location that makes sense for us to have our expo. When we have the mayor come on, by the way. Oh,
Kevin?
Go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, a quick note to folks. We have gotten about the virtual meetings. We've gotten several comments, and I think everybody is very eager to get back to in-person meetings. We really need to balance. Certain companies still have protocol where you can't have large groups, you can't meet together. There's some safety issue. There's choosing venues. We will absolutely get back to in-person meetings. This isn't the new normal. This way people, it works. It's just not the same, but we are working very hard to get people in person and back to the normal meeting. So it's not a decision that's taken lightly. Sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
No, that's fine. We do have a little time here. Obviously, the mayor has not joined us yet. So if we have other comments too that the executive committee and board would like to make, that's fine as well. It's something that has worked well. I thought the gala was fun. Still would be great to be in person, and I think we're going to think in those terms for 2022. And there's no denying that it would be great for us to be back together again in person. I'm trying to think if there's other events coming up that I'm missing. Next month is a really important one. It's a 2-hour, 2 CEUs, by the way, that we'll have, and we're going to be talking a lot about. We were going to say, back when we started talking about this program, it was going to be titled, gee, what did we learn from COVID and this and that? Well, we've adjusted it. What have we learned, and what are we still learning about COVID? And we have a large panel that will be in basically 2 parts, and we're going to cover the Central Business District, but all of our members' suburban input as well. That will cover what protocols have been put in place and how can we be better prepared, or to be as prepared as possible for when the workforce returns. And then this, for the last about half an hour or so, we have representatives from the Hennepin Theater Trust, and also Meet Minneapolis, a Convention and Visitors Bureau, and of course, Steve Kramer from the Downtown Council, who will talk about business and entertainment and sports in general. I think for those that have properties in downtown Minneapolis, although they were swept yesterday, with the Twins back playing, it's amazing how it's just starting to re-energize. And yes, concern about the trial, that's understood. But Dave St. Peter was on a call, the president of the Twins 2 days ago, and he was mentioning that so far it's worked really well on the fans coming to the games. So I think that's a little incremental step into how to re-energize downtown and to bring folks back. Steve Kramer said yesterday on a call that he actually was in a traffic jam on Washington Avenue. Oh my God, traffic jam, what's that? But he said, you know what, it actually felt good. So anyway, those days will be coming back. Let's see.
So Kevin,
Yeah.
maybe not, and I'm not sure if the mayor is going to get into this, but can you give us a very brief recap of the status of the trial at this point and what to expect over the next week or so?
Sure, Pat, thanks. From what we have been told, that it'll probably be sent to the jury for deliberations on Monday. Don't know how long that will last. I would just take a guess here that the decision by the jury may take place towards the end of next week. Of course, they could deliberate for 4 hours or 4 days or a week or so. So that will that's the next step. Operation Safety Net is what has been planned for almost 8 months for this particular trial. They're now in what's called phase 3. And if you've been downtown, you'll see a significant increase in presence by law enforcement and certainly the National Guard. I think is as disturbing as it is to see all that here and plywood up, I think we all agree, let's be as prepared as possible. We're hoping that nothing happens and that people have the right to speak their opinion and to protest and so on, have that happen. What we don't need to happen is any destruction or safety issues. It's in phase 3, Operation Safety Net, and that will remain in effect all the way through the end of the trial and the verdict and so on. As far as when it actually ends or becomes less apparent, that is to be determined. One other thing is, I was on a call with Shane Zahn yesterday, and the joint, if you don't know, every summer there's a group, whether it's the Met Transit, MPD, and the Sheriff's Department, they get together and kind of share responsibility for downtown Minneapolis. So that begins at the end of May. So hopefully things will subside and we'll get back to business as normal. Because I know a lot of businesses, a lot of tenants and that are looking to this. It's the COVID issue as well. And maybe what I could add, just one more thing, is that do know that we're on calls with HR directors. Many of them are tenants, and some of you on the call today in their buildings, and they're still, let's call it, struggling, figuring out what their workforce will be like moving forward. And there will be employees working permanently from home. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. It's just a matter of when do they feel the vaccinations have been distributed enough that they slowly bring their employees back. I don't think it's going to be a mass. In other words, if it's not going to be July 1st or August 1st or whatever, that all of a sudden 100% all filled up. That won't be the case. It'll gradually be a situation where they bring in volunteers first that would want to work and slowly go from there.
So it dovetails somewhat nicely, Kevin. One of the groups that we spend time with is Met Transit, and I know you and Deb and company are a little more versed on that than I am, but there is the question of, for us to get back to work, we have to be able to get to work. And I know Met Transit has been working on severely curtailed service for the past 12 to 14 months. Do we have any updates on how they're going to start slowly bringing service back, or kind of what the plan is?
Yeah, Adam Harrington, we've had a couple of times at the general meeting and on our coffee social. It was at one point kind of a chicken and egg situation that the HR directors would ask, well, Met Transit, well, when do you think you're going to be ramping up a service for the bus and the light rail and so on and so forth? And then their question back is, well, when were you going to bring your employees back in that regard? So I think they're slowly adding routes in that regard. And they'll actually react if there's particular area that there are more businesses having employees take transit downtown from a certain location, they will address that. I think they have moved. We read about the North Star line and they might be mothballing that for a period of time. But I guess I don't have a clear answer on that, Pat, that what they're doing, but they very much want to hear from us though. And that's why that HR director call that I was mentioning that I'm on, Adam Harrington from Met Transit is also on that. So he can, learn it as well.
Yep, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Pat.
We certainly encourage our members as well. Transit is such a big piece of what we do. To the extent that you rely on certain arms or legs of the transit map for your business, and to the extent that you're seeing the need for it to come back, they do wait for input from us, as Kevin mentioned. Please either contact Kevin or contact your local rep. Encourage them to kind of bring that back. That's a very important piece of what we do.
Yeah, it's helpful. We have a number of buildings in the Central Business District that report to Riley where their of return of employees is, and it's still, it's tweaking up a little bit, but we were stuck on about 10 to 12% there for a while, and now could be 12, it could be 22%. I mean, on one hand, we're saying, yay, 22%, but that's still a pretty thin return. But we are measuring that as well. You can hear our phone here at Boma Central is ringing in the background. I thought I muted it, but I'm assuming you can all hear me well. Now, when the mayor comes on, I know we do want to talk briefly about the trial, but I'd really like for us to focus on public safety as well, and then to get into some of the other areas, most importantly, the rebound and return of business. And to that point, there was a briefing scheduled for 9:30 this morning that was going to talk exclusively about the trial. Many of you saw it in the Boma briefings we sent out, and I know a lot of you said, oh, gee, is the mayor still going to be able to be there? They assured us that he was, but he may very well be opening that meeting. It's usually the departments of the city of Minneapolis that are commenting on that, but he may very well be presenting or opening that up, and then will be joining us. Otherwise, we're gonna have Boma bingo, and Pat, before he leaves, is gonna be the caller of the numbers.
And with that in mind, Kevin, I guess a quick question for you. Do we want to? Obviously, we've got a couple minutes here. Do we want to open up questions on any particular thing in the chat function? I think I'm sure some folks out there are thinking to themselves, what in the heck is going on with this, whatever this may be, you know, and I encourage, you know, it's time, folks, let's throw some questions out and make some conversation as we wait.
Sure. In advance, if you want to put things in the chat, I might actually have to put my cheaters on just to read it very well. But some of the areas that I would like for him to touch on are the trial, but as I mentioned, we don't necessarily want to dwell on it. Public safety, as I mentioned, the city's financial situation. Now, we have, I see that we might have the mayor on now, but in fact, there he is. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning, Kevin, and everyone here at BOMA. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, terrific. Glad you could join us. We got through some of our, I don't want to put my cheaters on so I can see you very clear here. But we went through, we had the election of our new officers of our board of directors and touched on some of the things we were involved with this past 13 months or so from a multitude of fronts. But again, thank you for your time. I know that with the briefing that was going on this morning and so on, that there's a lot of moving parts. So by way of just a quick introduction, for those of you, if you don't know the mayor of the city of Minneapolis, he served as a city council member in Ward 3 for a year, being elected some back in 13, and then has been our mayor elected in 2017. So he knows BOMA very well. He knows that we're business partners with the Downtown Council Chamber and others in that regard. So let's get right to it, if you don't mind, Mayor. We have 27 minutes to squeeze this in, but we were wondering if you had just some general comments on the trial that we all been reading about. There's a lot of preparation, but I was wondering if we could hear some of your thoughts on where we're at right now.
Absolutely. Again, thank you, Kevin, for hosting, and to all the BOMA members for everything that you've been doing, not just through this trial, but really over this past year. I recognize what a load it has been that you all have been carrying. I recognize the state of both the economy and safety of the real estate market in many respects has been a bit more tenuous, but you know what, we're going to bounce back in a major way from this. We truly will, and I'll get into that in a second. But for purposes of this trial, getting into a few pieces of logistics, we, for purposes of safety and security, have divided this trial into 3 phases. This is working in conjunction with this unified and coordinated command with a number of different multi-jurisdictional partners. We have divided into these 3 phases. The first phase being jury selection. The second phase was the trial itself. And then the third phase is jury deliberations, and then finally the verdict. And throughout those 3 phases, what we anticipate and what we are seeing is a gradual ramp up of both law enforcement and community partners as we progress towards these final stages here. Now, we originally were anticipating moving into phase 3 for the jury deliberation, and then we saw the tragic and really horrible killing of Dante Wright in Brooklyn Center, which did lead to some unrest and to some looting of businesses, mainly in Brooklyn Center, but also in Minneapolis as well. We expedited that transition to phase 3 a few days early. So instead of moving to phase 3 on Friday, when we anticipate the closing arguments will be made, we are doing them instead, starting really a couple of days ago, and you will continue to see that ramp up as we move into the final phase here. And so, as I mentioned, closing arguments should happen probably later this week. We anticipate jury deliberations happening next week. We don't exactly know when the verdict itself will be read. But the bottom line is we've been prepared. And one of the main differences between late May and early June and right now is we've had the asset of time. And we've literally been preparing since approximately August, culminating with a request for the National Guard in December, Those partners are very much on the ground. And I'll note that law enforcement is an important component, but is certainly not the only component. We've had the time and the ability also to build out these formal agreements with community-based partners, with neighborhood associations, with block captains, so that we're able to disseminate information very quickly. And we're able to receive information and intelligence back so that we're able to act upon it. And so we're moving into these final stages right now. Obviously, it is a very tense situation throughout our city. We fully recognize that. But it is our top priority and must be to keep the city safe, to make sure that people are safe, to make sure that no one sees that form of violence that we saw, and to prevent property damage, the kind of which we saw last summer. That would be unacceptable.
Okay. In turning to, I guess, public safety in general, and if I think most everyone on the call, and we have approaching 175 people on the call, that the mayor has been a real champion of Chief Arredondo and his efforts. I've testified with others in support of the funding of the MPD. Some of the messaging that came out last year was very difficult on a lot of us. But I was wondering if you could comment again on your relationship with the chief and the support of what he is doing, and the need for some of the changes as well.
Absolutely. The chief and I have been lockstep throughout this last very difficult year. I mean, we've seen mayors around the country part ways with their chief, terminate the employment agreements with their chiefs, and I've remained lockstep with ours throughout. And I'll note that I'm going to tell you the exact same thing that I would tell activists that are protesting outside of my home, which is that we do need deep and structural change as to how our MPD operates. We need we need true reform. We need aspects of safety beyond policing, where you don't need an officer responding every single time with a gun to especially these lower level incidents. And we need police. The message that has gone out about defund and abolish is not one I have ever supported. And Chief Arredondo and I have remained lockstep throughout. So I want to talk about just briefly about some of the aspects that we're pushing for to account for some of the attrition that we're seeing, and then some of the reforms that we've also made, because I think we need both. What we need in this city is a both-and approach. We need deep reform, and yes, you also need law enforcement. You take either one of those away, I think it interrupts the very necessary balance for public safety that we need to see. So first, as you know, we have lost a significant number of officers over these last 8 or so months. Normally on an annual basis, we lose somewhere in the range of 45, and this year it's been over 200. And so we need to account for that attrition, and we will. We've added 3 new recruiting classes here for this year. We anticipate adding even more next year to replace some of those officers that we have lost. Again, my position is clear. We need police. We need to be accounting for that attrition. We need to add back in these recruiting classes. I can't speak for where the city council is at, and I won't. But I'll tell you exactly what I will be advocating for, which is to making sure we have those officers back. And the chief has been very clear. If you don't have the necessary numbers for police, then your department becomes a one-dimensional department. You only have the ability to handle the most serious 911 calls. That is not acceptable. We need officers engaging. We need officers getting to know their local businesses, getting to know owners, getting to know people on the street. That is part of proactive safety that needs to take place. And the chief and I have undergone some really substantial and necessary reforms. There was the ban of neck restraints and chokeholds. There was the ban on warrior style training, both on and off duty. We were the first city in the country to do that. There's the increased body camera compliance. I mean, when I took office, we had about a 55% compliance rate with body cameras. We are now at 95%. So 55% then, 95% now. We are making progress, and we still have a long way to go. We have done a complete overhaul on our use of force policy to make it as strict as possible under state law. We've embedded a city attorney in the disciplinary process. And I can go on and on and on with the number of reforms that we've made. And the truth is that, we need to do more. We have a long way to go. But I think we need to really hone in on this both end approach. Let's get behind the necessary reform work. And, I do call on BOMA to get behind those necessary changes and reforms. And let's make sure that our police department is properly staffed so they're able to deal with the realities that people and businesses and residents are facing on the street because they're very real.
Okay. Thanks, Mayor. That's a very important issue for all of us and appreciate those comments. Let's talk a little bit about, like all businesses or associations, financial situation and so on. And obviously the property tax that's collected versus the portion that's collected by fees and other income and so on has been reduced. There is some federal dollars coming in. I was wondering if you could comment of just the overall health of the financial situation for the city of Minneapolis and how might the federal relief dollars come and be put into play for all of us in Minneapolis.
Absolutely. We made some very deliberate decisions prior to the unrest, prior to George Floyd's killing, prior to COVID-19 and the economic slowdown that were conservative in nature. We made decisions that would account for a conservative estimate for building permits, for instance. We baked into the regular and ongoing cycle for our contingency fund. So some of these things helped us weather this storm, but I'll also be honest, nobody anticipated the scope of what this storm would bring in terms of the pandemic and COVID-19. It is drastically greater than I think any of us thought. Normally on an annual basis, we get somewhere in the range of 50% of our revenues from property taxes. And thank you so much, building owners, for your contributions to our city. We get the other 50% from other forms of revenue, for parking fees, entertainment taxes, sales and liquor, that kind of thing. And when you don't have the same influx of people coming downtown, for instance, on a daily basis, it does dramatically reduce those sources. And so we had a significant gap. We had a significant gap at the city that we needed to be able to fill. We immediately had a contract freeze, spending freeze in many cases, travel freeze. We enacted a hiring freeze as well. Of course, there are exceptions that are made to that hiring freeze when necessary. And for instance, the recruiting classes would be one important segment of it. We also are now thankful that it looks like we're going to get a pretty significant amount of money in the form of stimulus. We've got about $281 million that are coming in through rescue funds. Those rescue funds from the federal government can be devoted to a combination of several activities. First, we want to make sure that we're helping those that are struggling most. People who are experiencing homelessness, people who are hungry, people who are on the verge of starvation or even death. Next, we want to make sure that we're backfilling some of the losses that we've experienced over the last years and making sure that our city is on stable financial position. And then we want to make sure we're gearing everything back towards recovery. This needs to be a rebound. I fully believe in this city, and we're going to make sure that we're going to rebound in true fashion. And so, yeah, those monies can be used for a number of different facets, including that.
Next, when you touched a little bit on rebound and recovery for businesses, for the city, for residents and everyone. And I know that there's a lot of partnerships that are being developed out there and initiatives and so on. And by the way, I encourage all the folks on this call, if you want to put things in the chat to let us know. I keep reminding everyone when you hear opinions of it's despair, etc. And I say, rewind the tape and look at how things were in 2017, 18, 19, how energized the city of Minneapolis, in particular downtown, from a business perspective and so on. And I'm one that thinks those days will return. But as far as what the city's departments and so on, and in unison with the business community, how can we help businesses rebound, recover, and move on to the future?
Well, first, and I know this doesn't necessarily alleviate any of the distress that many of you are presently feeling. This is a dynamic that every city in the entire country, certainly every major city, is dealing with right now. Whether that's New York City or Chicago, Portland, Seattle, you name it, they are dealing with both the economic realities that we're living in right now, and from mainly COVID-19, the global pandemic, and safety concerns and an uptick in crime. Pretty much every city in the country is seeing this right now, and it means that we need serious government. We need to be dealing in reality right now as to where we are, and we've set up a number of forward-thinking, recovery and rebound-minded entities that'll make sure that yes, we are quote unquote rebuilding. But we're also transforming. Every single day I wake up and I tell myself a few things. I say, all right, first we're going to tell the truth, no matter how hard it is to tell. We're going to tell the truth. Second, we're going to do what we believe is right, and then third, we're going to view each and every day as an opportunity, and it is. Each day is an opportunity right now to do things better and differently, and we can set Minneapolis on a trajectory where we're setting an example for others to follow. We've got the global spotlight on our city right now. Let's use it and show the world who we can be. And so we've set up a number of different organizations and partnerships that will really be geared towards that recovery. There's the Minneapolis Forward Community Now Coalition, which is very much making sure that as we rebuild, we're making sure to center the voices of our Black and brown communities, not just in the decision-making process, but also key beneficiaries in the work. We've got our Minneapolis Rebuild Resilient program, which is organized to make sure that we're accounting for climate change and making sure that we're rebuilding in a sustainable fashion. We've set up a commercial property development fund that has been seeded with significant money from the cities. We anticipate and hope that we'll get even more monies from the state that will allow business owners to even have a stake in some of the underlying ownership model. We've got a business technical assistance program that we've set up as well to make sure that owners and businesses are able to navigate the difficult process, be it insurance or the city's process itself, facade improvement, grants, forgivable loan programs, rubble removal. I can go on. We've got a list of programs that have and will be implemented in the very near future. And we're also working to just do the basics. Let's help to make sure that these corridors rebound immediately, after we get through this trial, in a way that, we're checking to make sure all the facades are set up right, that the windows have new and fresh panes on them. They get a fresh coat of paint. Like, things need to feel and look like a rejuvenated city again. And I'll also note the importance of remembering what we love about downtown, remembering what we love about this city. It's so easy to forget when you've been sitting at home watching Netflix for however long, the things that you love about Minneapolis. We have an exceptional city. We have an exceptional city. And whether that memory is of a packed, crowded, sweaty bar with all your friends, or it's heading over to Target Field for a game, or Orchestra Hall, or farmers markets, we want to and will get back to that point. And let's start thinking about those things that were really extraordinary. And there will come a time where I think, we're going to need to lock arms with all, business leaders and CEOs and our city leaders and say, you know what, we're coming back to work. We're locking arms. We're going to do this right. Of course, we got to account for what the epidemiologists are saying, but we want to rejuvenate downtown yet again. And there will be a day, I hope, where we're all coming back and we're saying, you know what, the farmers market will be activated. There will be a concert. The music will be playing. There'll be programming out, and we'll make this place fun. you know, and that's a huge part of what it means to live or to work in downtown. And that's a huge part of the attraction, and we can't shy away from it.
Yeah. And this is just a comment by me, but boy, Mayor, if an example, whether it's Hennepin County, they're a little busy right now, but if at some point the city hall is open and the departments are coming back and city council members are saying, look, we're here at City Hall, come on down. I don't know if I'm looking for a comment from you on that, other than I think that would set a really wonderful example for others to follow. Let's talk about your priorities and accomplishments. I think we pretty much touched on public and community safety in that, but affordable housing, economic inclusion, and climate and energy and environment, that was your platform when you were elected. We probably had to pause in some of that with what has transpired over the last 13 months, but let's go back and say, and look at what was accomplished and maybe your vision. We'll get into this little thing called an election coming up in November, but your priorities back then, now, and maybe into the future.
Well, thank you, Kevin. It's, you know, I'll be careful just given that I'm in City Hall right now, and this is, of course, I'm operating in my public job as opposed to the campaign, but I will certainly provide where we've been and where I think we need to go. You know, we had 2 years of unprecedented progress, 2 years of really unprecedented economic growth. We saw some extraordinary work in the area of housing. We, in every form, were really leading the country, investing more on a per capita level in affordable housing than almost any city in the entire country. We have focused on serving those who are experiencing homelessness, making sure to set up that deeply affordable and low-income housing so that people who are experiencing homelessness have that next rung on the ladder to pull themselves out. We've added a number of different programs like Stable Homes, Stable Schools, which specifically serves kids in our Minneapolis public school system that are on the verge of experiencing homelessness. You know, we instituted a 2040 plan, which was nation leading. There's a number of things that we've done that have quite literally been groundbreaking and are now being copied by cities and states across the country. And that's just how. Now, yes, the last year has absolutely put a damper on some of the offense that we've been able to play. That's clear. You know, my goal usually is to have, you know, 60 to 70% of the day focused on offense. Undoubtedly, over this last year, that has not been the case. We've been doing everything possible as an enterprise to respond to the circumstances that we have been dealt. And those circumstances are very real. And, you know, first off, here's what I think we need. In City Hall, we need some serious government. Yes, we need visionaries. Yes, we need people that are thinking about 5 and 10 and 15, 20 years down the road. We also need to make sure that people are very serious about the moment that we're in right now. And that's the nature of this city work is, you know, in Congress, you pass a bill and the monies go out and maybe you see a difference in, you know, 4 or 5 years down the road as mayor. We need to deal with the issues right now. We need to deal with the issues of safety, of economic inclusion, of housing and homelessness right now. And so that has really been my focus. And, you know, I won't get into, you know, the campaign or the other opponents in the race, but there's you know, there are certainly differences in terms of the methodology and structure. I'm not for defund. I'm not for abolish. I don't think that's the right route right now. And but, you know, to finish up, let me just say we will rebound in magnificent fashion. I feel it. You know, there are people that are rearing to go, willing and ready to remember and experience everything that they love about this exceptional city. I do think that we can be a beacon of hope and opportunity and really an example for the rest of the country to follow. Downtown and BOMA, you all are a critical part of that. because, you know, you don't have an extraordinary city without an extraordinary downtown. And that's going to be a very important part of this recipe towards success.
I think I was on a call with you, Mayor, when someone may have asked the question, or maybe referring to the question after the last year, 13, 14 months, and they asked the question, and you're going to seek re-election, whatever. And I've never heard you more spirited in your response to that, and without it being the actual election itself. But I think it came clear that we said, we have unfinished business and I want to be a part of that. And I just, and you had a little baby too. That was, let's sprinkle that in. But back to the comment about that this wasn't the time for you to turn away and say, oh my gosh, what a situation there's there. It's more, let's move forward. And I wondered if you could just.
Absolutely. You know, and it wasn't the normal decision-making process when I decided to run for re-election again. You know, normally it's, you know, what's the vision? Where's the coalition that we're going to build? How are we going to get there? You know, it's this sort of big and visionary and moment where you're deciding, and you talk with your friends and your family and your supporters, and you make it. And this time, you know, of course, there's this big vision for the future as to where we need to go, but there's also a very sobering and serious piece of this right now, which is we need to get the city through this. You know, right now, I think we need a level of seriousness in government where we're able and willing to make the right decisions, even when you have people perhaps yelling at you from every single side, you know, and you need to be willing to say the same exact thing to everybody that you're talking to. And truthfully, at times in telling the truth, you're going to disappoint everybody that you're talking to. And that's a frustrating place to be at times as mayor. But, you know, I've been saying only half jokingly recently, you know, being mayor is both, I believe, the most wonderful job in the world to be the mayor of Minneapolis, but it's also a job where one of the major tasks is to jump on all of the grenades of societal shortcomings, and you still get blamed by anybody that gets hit by the shrapnel. And it's a difficult spot to be in. And so it was a much longer conversation with my wife, Sarah, as we made this decision, but it is out of a commitment to this city. I mean, it is at a deep and abiding belief in the city and a commitment to it. This city doesn't quit, and neither do I.
Well, I think you should know, and that BOMA, along with the tenants that occupy our building and their employees, want to be part of all the solutions in the rebound and recovery. And when you talked about linking arms, BOMA would be one of those entities, and I'm sure you know that will be very engaged and involved with the next step. So with that, Mayor, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. We look forward to getting through 2021, and more importantly, as you pointed out, the rebound and recovery to make Minneapolis and the surrounding area the city that it has always been.
That's right. And Kevin and BOMA, thank you so much for your work and your partnership.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. So that concludes our annual meeting. It's right up at 10. There was a question about, do we, BOMA, endorse candidates? We have not traditionally for a long time endorsed candidates. That's a position that we keep. But I'll tell you this, if any of you or all of you on the call, and not just Minneapolis, whatever community you're located in, but primarily with Minneapolis right now, if you're a resident, you represent a vote. We've been encouraged by council members that have been on some of our calls to get to know the candidates, get to know their positions, caucus, join a caucus and become involved. This is probably the most important election the city of Minneapolis has had for a long, long time. And for the mayor, it's a 4-year term. For city council, it's just a 2-year term this go around. but I can encourage you enough to learn who the candidates are and their positions and we will continue to work in tandem with the other business associations to offer debates or forums so that these candidates can talk and you can ask specific questions. That completes our annual meeting. Again, thank you to those that are rolling off our board and the new members. Congratulations. And we look forward to working with the new board and representing all of you on this call. With that, thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.